Jessica. Welcome to Aligned Voices.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here.
Jessica, to begin with, for the listeners who are listening to you for the first time, who is Jessica?
So I am first and foremost, I'm in recovery. So I identify as an alcoholic and an addict, and I put that above all things, including being a mother, because without my recovery, I wouldn't be anything. So I have 13 years sober, and I am a mom to three daughters. I'm an author and I write full time for a living. My second novel just came out, and I write women's book club fiction, which is basically books that are considered what we say is auto fiction, which is like based on my real life, but then there's elements that is fictionalized. And basically, I write stories that want to spark a discussion. And typically, with these two books, the first one is Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. And the second book that just came out a few weeks ago is called Both Can Be True. And something that I will continue to write about is my lived experience in addiction recovery. And I cover that in a fictionalized way using real things that I've survived in addiction.
Wonderful. So, talking about your early life, in several of your posts, you have reflected on the person that you were before sobriety, and you have often talked about that version of yourself that was simply trying to survive. So
Mm.
I would like to go back there for a moment and ask you, what was it like growing up? Who was Jessica before alcohol entered the picture? Or to be more precise, how would you describe yourself as a child and a teenager?
Yeah, so as a child, I did have a really for the most part, I had a really happy childhood. I had a loving family, especially a loving extended family, and we were really close. My mom worked for the airlines, and so we got to travel all over the world, which was wonderful. But straight from the moment that I could really start articulating it via writing and journaling, I felt like there was something different or off or not quite right with myself. I didn't really feel like I belonged. I, I could relate to other people, but I also felt things very deeply, and so I was affected by, hearing news of tragedies or, if somebody, looked at me wrong, and so I was very sensitive. And so as a child, I was an athlete and I played sports, and that was really something that saved me from, I think, going down into addiction earlier than I did because I really put an emphasis on my athletic ability. And then once I got to college, there was this normalization of a drinking culture that I felt like I really thrived in because once I discovered drinking, it was like that light sort of came on that I felt like had been dimmed in me, or just that it was born dimmed and I didn't know how to sort of ignite it. And I kind of describe it as like this like exhale of relief. Like I took that first sip and all of a sudden my body just went like there it is. And that sensation lasted, for a little bit, maybe, like uh, in the course of a drinking time, it would be maybe for 20 minutes. And then after that 20 minutes, I was constantly seeking relief and more relief and trying to get, um, I was just trying to get more, trying to feel better, to like reach the next level. And so it was never good enough. And that was sort of the nature of my drinking from then on. And so my tolerance got higher. I started having more and more consequences. Um, and yeah, that was basically the beginning of it until it really got to the point that it was really bad.
So you were talking about having very loving family, and I am sure that you were surrounded by a lot of lovely people. But you also mentioned that there were struggles as well that you were facing. When you look back at your childhood or teenage years, were there signs that you were struggling internally that was not quite visible to others?
Yes. Yeah, so mental health, the way that I was born in the 80s, and the way that we talked about mental health and addiction in general wasn't really a part of the conversation. If anybody had any struggles and you needed to get help for it, it was sort of frowned upon or looked down upon. I watch a show with my daughter called The Gilmore Girls, and they were talking about like, oh, maybe we need therapy. And they're like, oh, no, only crazy people get therapy. And that was like early 2000s. And I'm like, truly, like, now we look at, resources, like therapy as tools, to help support us. And so it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't available. I think it was available if I needed it, but I did a lot of my suffering internally, and that looked a lot like mental illness, but not outwardly so. I struggled with intrusive thoughts where I would obsess over like my safety, having, profound fears of really anything, my safety, my family's safety. And so my thought pattern would just become all consumed by that. And as a child, I learned I was trying to control my environment through my thoughts and through my sort of behaviors. And I thought that I was managing it that way. And, later on in adulthood, I learned that that was OCD, which is what it was. And also undiagnosed inattentive ADHD, which is what I have now. And that looks like really struggling with being able to regulate your emotions. I could go from 0 to 100 at the drop of a hat. If again something small happened, something big happened, I had no coping tools whatsoever. And so that looked a lot like depression and sadness, and a lot of anxiety, and not even being able to really navigate what anxiety was because we didn't have the words for it. And so outwardly, I share this because I had all the ingredients for such a wonderful childhood. And yet, there were things that happened to me as a result of my mental illness and as a result of, just the circumstance in which can happen sometimes, that I eventually found substances as my coping strategy. And that became my go to make myself feel better, to self soothe, to um, basically turn off the noise that is in my brain 24/7. And I just wanted to quiet it. And that's when I started using substances in that way.
And did that impact your grades? Were you having trouble making friends at?
So the thing that is really tricky about the thing that's the most sneaky, I think, about addiction sometimes is it hides in plain sight. And so I'm an overachiever. I pride myself on putting my whole heart into everything when I do it. And that's true of my writing. That's true of motherhood. That's true of, of my life today. But I also put everything into pretending. I put everything into looking like I had it all together. And so, no, my grades weren't affected. I still went to a 4-year university. I still went to grad school and I got my teaching credentials. And I would be blacked out drunk in the middle of a presentation in grad school. And I still passed and I still got married. I still bought a house. And so, one of the things that I think is really important in my story and sharing is that you can be suffering internally and basically have self-loathing and hatred and all of this, and then outwardly you have all the boxes checked, right? And there's been almost no consequences. Yes, I was losing friends because I was breaking plans and I was not doing what I said I would be doing. But I always had a way to sort of talk myself out of it. And that's the master manipulation that you have to use as like a survival strategy to keep your addiction alive and well. So when I put all of my emphasis into my addictions, I thrived in it, meaning I took it all the way that you can take it, to the worst possible places, but I made it look like it was working for me. And in reality, I've never been so miserable in my entire life.
And you have also spoken openly about feeling different and searching for a sense of belonging. So, how do you understand those experiences now?
Yeah, so I think no matter what, I sort of a universal feeling, especially in a specific age. Now I have a 10-year-old or 7-year-olds through 12-year-olds, and there's this prepubescent age, and then sort of window of time, especially as you were a young woman, where you don't know where you belong in this world, and there's going to be a lot of opinions on where you should belong and how you should belong and how you should look and how you should act and how much space you should take up. And so, depending upon your internal dialogue, how, you can be raised by a family that's incredibly supportive and loving, and still you can have a conversation inside your own head that says, I'm not good enough. I need validation from other people. I'm going to seek it out in the wrong place. And so, there's just that sense of unsure, again, like I said, unsure where you are in your place in the world. And so you're looking for somebody to kind of show you. And sometimes the wrong people show you, and that can lead you down a certain path. And if you're highly influenced by other people, it can feel like belonging and it can feel like, oh, I'm a part of now. Um, when in reality, that's not the part you were supposed to be a part of. I think young people these days do such a great job of exploring their identities in a way that we weren't able to, that either wasn't safe to, or um, just like self expression. I didn't feel comfortable being different in any way. I'm 6'1", and I was 6'1" in junior high. And I just remember feeling like always being pushed to the back, to the outside of the picture, because you can't stand up front and block everyone. So people just sort of push me aside. And in that sense, when I found drinking is what brought me to the middle. It made me feel like I was the center, and I loved that feeling. I didn't know how I was acting when I was in the middle, but I didn't care anymore. I felt like I belonged. And then that feeling gets taken away when it's no longer serving you. And that happened pretty quickly for me, luckily.
I remember you had shared publicly that you were the tallest girl in the in the room, and that you sometimes felt like an outsider growing up.
Correct. Yes. I likened it to, um, I don't know, in when I was growing up, we had like dances, and in the dances, you basically dance in a circle, and then this is like a for a fast dance, not like slow songs, and literally, I felt like I was being pushed to the back of the circle because I'm too tall and just move back. But when I was drinking was the only time I felt like I was in the center, and I could be the center of it and feel the light on me, basically. And I loved that feeling, but I could never do it in my awkward teenage body. And so it sort of blossomed from that, where it was like a lot of people brought it to my attention, had to say, like, why are you so tall? That's so weird. Just the things that kids do. They always, find a way to say something that kind of stings. But when you're deeply sensitive, you internalize it into there's something wrong with me. And unfortunately, that can translate over time. And drinking was the thing that made that switch off.
And you have also reflected on how difficult it was to feel different as an adolescent. If you had the opportunity to now sit beside your younger version, say one of those seventh grade dancers, what would you whisper to her?
I would say, and this is how I try and raise my children now, is I would say, you are enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. And, you're loved unconditionally. Um, I think I would say that it's completely normal to feel different, to feel other, to feel like you don't belong. Um, no matter if you have, if you're green, if you're 2 feet tall, it makes no difference. I look at my children now, and it's so hard to watch them go through the same struggles that I do. Um, and knowing that all I can do is love them unconditionally. I can't take it away from them. I wish I could take that sadness, and I wish I could go back in time to my seventh grade Jessica and say, like, look at what you did with your life. Like, you should be so proud of yourself. We can do this. Like, you're going to make it through. Because in that seventh grade time, I wasn't convinced that I was going to make it day by day. Nor did I really want to. That's how lonely and sad it was uh, inside. And so, yeah, I would first and foremost give her a big hug and say, "You're enough."
You definitely are, Jessica.
Thank you.
And I know this might seem like a repeat question, but just wanted to dig a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So, what do you think your younger version needed the most that she may not have received at that point of time? And could you think of anything that could have made her life better?
I think truly a safe person to have really hard conversations with without judgment. Um, Having somebody that you can trust without criticism, uh, without them trying to necessarily fix it, to listen, to normalize. Uh, there's something about not there's one thing to write, in your teenage journal. It doesn't talk back to you. It doesn't tell you, what it doesn't give you any sort of peace, other than to let it all out, but you feel like you're just sort of screaming into the void. And oftentimes when you have friendships or girl friendships or, things like that, you're sort of talking into a vacuum because you're all going to agree with each other. You're all going to, I mean, at this day and age, it's going to be social media liking posts that look this way and that. But if you don't have a person that is trusted and, older, wiser, a person that like can mentor you basically and say like, let me just listen to you, and make you feel normal in your thinking. I think that's truly the best thing that you can find is someone that is that trusted person. Um, because at the end of the day, we're really looking for a safe place to normalize conversations that are hard, to say the scary things out loud to someone else and have them not reject you, or not try and fix you immediately, just sort of listen. So that would be the thing that I would
A,
go
a
after
safe
for.
haven, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that provides a very big support, right? You have somebody listening without judging you, without trying to mend or provide suggestions. Yes, that really helps. So now that we have touched upon the early life of yours, I wanted to ask, how did it all begin? I read a conversation where you had mentioned, in fact, you did mention it before on this podcast, that alcohol initially felt like a deep exhale. And that really stayed with me. So I just wanted to know what was happening in your life at the time that made alcohol feel like a relief.
Yeah, so like I shared before, about seeking validation and attention. So in my own personal life, my parents were getting divorced, and my dad was in the process of moving out of our house, and I'm really close with my dad. We have a really great relationship. And so there was a transition that was happening, and I felt like my family was, being split up, which, it
Falling
was.
apart.
And so my parents were doing the very best that they possibly could. Again, being a child of like the 2000s, we had a lot of freedoms. My sister and I, again, we were very good students, and we presented very high functioning in everything that we did. And so my parents had this false sense of security because that's what I was showing them. And yet, internally, and what was actually happening on the inside, was me seeking validation in very toxic, unhealthy relationships with, specifically with friendships, and specifically with men that were older than me. That was inappropriate and in every way it could have been. And so I sought that out, not knowing that that wasn't the right response, but I essentially didn't have the world's knowledge, at 14, to know when someone is taking advantage of you. You feel seen and you feel important, and predatory people will prey on you in that way. And so that's what happened. And that, in combination with using substances, it felt like the perfect relief, because it's a temporary reprieve, right, from myself. And I thought that that was the solution, to all my problems, right? Attention from other people, this warm, drunken feeling where I don't have to be in my head. I don't have to have these obsessive thoughts. I don't have to worry about my family falling apart. I can just numb everything away temporarily. And then hopefully the next day I can do it all again. And so it was just it was the perfect ingredients to pour together for disaster.
I can relate to that. And you have also challenged the idea of that addiction always begins with one dramatic event.
Yep.
So as you reflect on your journey, were there particular life circumstances, emotional struggles, or needs that gradually increased your resilience on alcohol? I also wanted to understand, what do you mean when you challenge that addiction always begins with one dramatic event?
Yeah. So, like I said before, where um, I've had a lot of people, say things like, "Well, you don't look like you were an alcoholic," or "You don't, grew up privileged and white and blonde," and all these things that basically gave me a leg up in society, because that's just the world in which, unfortunately, still exists. And so you have no reason, right? It's like it's not like your family died in a plane crash and you grew up in poverty. And I wanted to challenge that, because addiction doesn't discriminate between backgrounds, nationality, between tragedy, between socioeconomic status. It actually doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. I think certain things can absolutely speed the process along. But in my case, And something I had to learn was genetically, I'm predisposed to being an addict. My family is from Ireland, which, has very high addiction for alcohol. And I have an uncle who died of this disease, and I have an aunt who's celebrating 35 years of sobriety. And so we've seen the full sort of gamut of it. But addiction runs really deep in my family. And so I like to say that genetically, no matter what, even if I won the lottery, had absolutely everything I could ever want in my life, I think that addiction will always find you eventually, because that was my experience in it. There wasn't one single tragic event that happened. There was a series of, a sexual assault that was violent. That was definitely something that sort of started me on a certain road. But as I said, if we're looking back at when I was in maybe 10, 11, 12, that sense of otherness wasn't rooted in childhood trauma at that particular point. And so I do think that there is sort of a path that I believe is inevitable. It's definitely inevitable in the way that kids are drinking now, in the way that alcohol is an addictive substance. So I feel like if you have those genetic component, you're using alcohol as your main coping strategy, which you're not alone, because if you look at every TV show that's on right now, you see adults everywhere drinking, using drugs to cope with all of their problems 24/7. And so if we're showing that and saying, well, this is what you do, people are going to take that to heart. And so do I think that anybody has the potential to have a problem with a substance? Absolutely. Certain people more so than others. And I just know for myself, it was always going to be in the cards for me. My personality is such that I don't do anything halfway. And that just happened to be true in addiction as well, of like, I'm not just going to have one drink, I'm going to have 10 drinks because I can. I'm not just going to have a little bit of ice cream, I'm going to have the whole ice cream because I can. But now that translates to, I'm not just going to write one book, I can write two. So I'm going to in 2 years. And you can use it for good or you can use it for evil. And thankfully, I've changed course to use it for good.
And at the time, did you recognize that your relationship with alcohol was becoming unhealthy, or did that realization come much later?
Yeah, so this part I think is really important to try and articulate. And this is what I try and do in my books because I don't think it's done very well as a society. And so, in my experience, I like to share this. When you're inside active addiction, you don't know it. You can't know it. Um, in fact, you have something in your mind that's telling you this is the most important thing in the world. You can burn your house down if you need to get access to more drinking. And in my mind at that time, that made the most sense to me. That was completely logical. And it was like, no, I have to cancel plans with everybody. I have to get another drink. It just, that's the logical thing. So what happens is that's the scariest part is when you're in it and you can't see it. Everyone around you can see it. And that's the piece where you basically are just disconnected from the rest of the world. And we all know those people. We've seen those people. Those are the people that break my heart the most in the community that I work with in active addiction, is the ones that are in it. And you look at them and like, I just had a meeting with somebody who heard me speaking on a podcast, and she was sharing with me that she's been thinking about not drinking for 2 years now. But she's not going to stop. And I said, okay, just, tell me a little bit more about that. And so she's like, well, like I haven't had any consequences. And she's like, I don't have any consequences. And so why would I stop? And I'm like, but you've been thinking about not drinking for 2 years. Why wouldn't you try not drinking? And it's all consuming in her thoughts all the time. And yet she's telling me, but I don't have a problem. So that's the piece that is the most confusing part, because I'm like, okay, well, why did you want to meet with me if you don't have a problem? What, 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 what are you hoping that I'm going to tell you you don't have a problem? Like, are you hoping I'm going to give you a solution? So that's the piece that I find to be the hardest, um, and the place that most people feel the most confused. And that's where I was the most confused, especially because we live in a society where if I wanted to go drink a bottle of wine tonight, I could just say, I could go on social media. I mean, obviously not as a sober person now, but let's say that I wasn't. And I could say, last week of school for my kids, I'm going to go out with a bang. I'm going to have a bottle of wine. And everybody would be like, yeah, great idea. Like it's on sale at Costco. Go do it. Okay. Well, it sounds fine. It's probably fine. So if we live in that space and everybody else around us is normalizing that, that's what we're hearing. We hear the loud noises of cheering us on, to keep going. And in mommy wine culture and that whole phenomenon, um, it's normalized and accepted and encouraged. And so I would have loved that if I was still actively drinking, because I'd be like, oh, is it Tuesday? Oh, it's Tuesday. So Tuesdays we drink, right? And they're like, yep, Tuesdays we drink. So no, I had no idea when I was inside it that it was happening to me in that way. Um, and all that would happen was I would get little glimmers of, uh-oh, maybe like, I'll give you an example. I needed to go on antibiotics because I had strep throat. And on the bottle, it says, don't drink alcohol with. And I called my uncle, who's a doctor, and I was like, is that like a hard no or like a suggestion? And that was for 7 days, right? I was like, it was college. I was like, okay, well, it's Tuesday. We start drinking on Tuesday. How am I supposed to get to the next Tuesday? And so there would be little moments like that. And he would say something like, well, yeah, like, sorry, you can't drink for 7 days. Is that a problem? And I'd be like, no, no, not a problem, not a problem. And then you'd have that little moment, that might plant a little seed in your head, and those seeds of doubt that say, oh, maybe it is. And then you go right back into whatever. But there's enough of those that happen over time, and enough people check in with you. And that's my other advice, is to have people you surround yourself with that can be honest with you. I was really lucky to have family and friends that just kept bothering me. They kept hounding me to say, like, something is wrong. Something's wrong. And I'd be like, no, nope, nothing's wrong. I promise. It's just stressful. I was a special education teacher and my job was really stressful. So I was like, nope, it's really hard. I have really high needs population of students. You find the excuse, you'll always find it. But people didn't let me get off the hook. And that's what I do for other people now, is I just keep showing up and saying, I see you. I just want to let you know, like, I'm here. And when they're ready, they'll reach their hand out. That's the hope.
Of course, that's the hope, and that's exactly what we are doing here. And
Exactly.
now that we understand why and how did it happen, I would like to come to the part where you decided to change.
Hmm.
And many people describe it as when they hit the rock bottom moment. Did you have one, or was it a gradual realization that something had to change?
Yeah, so I was a teacher. I was a special education teacher, and my job was really stressful and demanding. And so in that time, I I knew I should like look at my drinking, but I didn't want to. And so instead, I went to my doctor and said, I have really high anxiety. My anxiety is really high. Now, that might have been really true. I did have high anxiety for my whole childhood, but drinking 1000% made it about a million times worse. But I told the doctor I had anxiety. And so they said, okay, well, let's try you on like an SSRI medication, which is like an antidepressant, anti anxiety. And again, on the bottle, it says, watch drinking with when taking this. And I took that as like a winky face of like, okay, I'll watch it. Oh, if I mix those two together, it actually makes the effects of alcohol more powerful. And this was actually a double edged sword for me because that got me faster to my rock bottom than I would have been before, because I started having more consequences. Like I started calling people a lot more late at night and asking, like saying, I need help in my blackout. I would say that. And I was literally calling out for help. And then during spring break, I decided to paint we just moved into a new house and I decided to paint our living room. And so it was 10 o'clock on a Monday and I got really drunk and I fell off of a chair and I tore my knee in three different places. And I ended up calling my husband, and he came home, and him and our neighbor had to carry me out to the car because I couldn't walk. And what was so crazy is I came to learn that our neighbors actually was actually sober. So he was actually like 10 years sober or something. So as he's like, we had never met him before because we had just moved in, and this is how he's meeting me for the first time. And I'm sloppy and bruised and all the things. But, I'm a big person. And so they're like carrying me into the car. And so that was my introduction to pain medication. And then I was like, wait a minute. Pain medication, anti anxiety medication, and alcohol. And I thought I had found heaven. And really what it was hell because I ended up losing my job. I had called in sick so many times, and they decided not to ask me back as a teacher. And again, I share this because, first of all, my privilege, but second of all, I am very good at faking it. So I gathered all the parents of my students. I wrote letters about how wronged I was, and I met with the superintendent and showed him all this waves of support that I had because I was at a time I was very good at my job for a moment. I just wasn't responsible. And he was convinced and he gave me tenure on the spot, actually. And I thought, okay, well, I can't have a problem because I just got tenure and there's no consequence, right? Because I did lose my job because of my poor behavior and, showing up hungover and throwing up in the bathrooms in the morning, which is what I was doing. Um, but again, I needed to find a way out of it because I didn't want to believe that it was as bad as it was. And so from there, I ended up having to do rehabilitation for my knee, and the mixture of pain pills and anti-anxiety medication plus drinking turned into my rock bottom. I couldn't keep it together anymore. And I just was very lucky in my last drink. I It was like a family party. Um, we were celebrating. My sister-in-law had also just bought a house, and they were doing like a family barbecue. And I asked my other sister-in-law to drive me because I was too drunk. Um, to drive myself. And then I don't remember the party at all. And my husband, and I embarrassed him, of course, because it was his family. And then I woke up and I was going to be sick again because I'd either, if I was quote unquote doing it right, I would get sick the night before. So I didn't have to experience throwing up, not um, sober. It's easier to throw up when I was intoxicated. And so then I came to and I was like, okay, oops, I didn't throw up. I passed out, which is what happened. And I looked in the mirror as I was making myself throw up. Um, and I heard a voice, like something. I'm sure at that point I was hallucinating. And it said, haven't you had enough yet? And I realized I had enough. So I walked back into my bedroom where my husband was, and I said, I think I have a problem with drinking and I need help. And he said, I'm so relieved you said this. I've been waiting for you to say this. Let's get you help. And so I knew where to go. Um, like I said, I have family that is in recovery. And so I'm an overachiever. And I was like, well, how do I win at recovery? And so I was like, okay, I'll go to the doctor. I'll have them check my blood level, like my liver enzymes. I will be the best student and I'll go to a recovery program. So I went to like a newcomer meeting for a 12-step program. And I got my blood work done, and my doctor was like, wow, your liver enzymes look like you've been drinking, like you look like a 70-year-old man. I've never seen them this high. Because at that point I was on a handle of vodka every other day. Um, and they're like, it's a good thing you recognize that you have a problem. This would have been really awful. Um, and so that was me asking for help. And yet it didn't just magically it didn't just magically transform everything, which I had to learn. I had to learn coping skills. I had to learn everything without reaching for something outside of myself. And that was the hardest thing for me to learn.
So now that you decided to be off alcohol, um, what emotions did you experience during the first days of choosing sobriety?
So I and I share this really honestly. I was so depressed when I stopped drinking. I remember going to meetings and sitting around other people and thinking, this is hell. Um, Also, I didn't believe that other people were actually sober. I didn't think that actually existed. I thought everybody that said that they didn't drink were lying because I was a liar. Because I would say, oh, I didn't drink. And I was like, okay, so I'll just manipulate everybody and figure out a way to hide it. I'll just hide it better. And then something about listening to other people share and people being vulnerable. I was like, okay, well, that sounds kind of like me, but not really. Not really, but kind of. And so I was like a little bit open to it. And I was like, okay, but like I've tried the thing where I've done tally marks on my arm. I've had my husband hide the alcohol. I've hid my ID so I can't buy it. You name it, I've tried it. No hard alcohol, no whatever. All the rules, all the games. And I was like, okay, but I haven't tried this like completely not drinking. And actually, I had watched enough like reality TV. I love they have like sober shows and things like that with Dr. Drew. They had a in United States they have one. It's like Sober House. And Dr. Drew he's an addiction family medicine specialist, and he always like shared it is not a halfway. You cannot get sober by going in halfway. You can't get sober and drink at your wedding. You can't get sober and drink on New Year's. That doesn't work. There is no half measures. And so I was like, well, I can actually let me try that. Because again, I don't do anything halfway. So I was like, okay, what if I just tell everyone I know that I have a problem with alcohol. And then I have to be sober because I have a lot of pride and I have a huge ego. And I was like, I don't want to fail. And so within the first week of sobriety, I called, emailed every single person in my giant family, and I said, I need you to keep me accountable. Um, and then 30 days in, I got my 30-day chip and I started to feel sick again. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I feeling like I'm going to puke again? This doesn't make sense. I haven't felt this way since I was drinking. And it was because I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. And we had tried to get pregnant for over 2 years, but I was drinking so heavily. Thank God I did not. And that was another protective layer. Basically, she helped save me in the way that I needed that time, that extra pressure to stay sober, with me growing her inside, and I needed that time to really like get to know myself as a sober person and to see if I could like love this version of me. And so I'm so grateful for her because without that 9 months and without that time of saying to my whole family and at friends that I have a problem, help me stick to this, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I would have gone right back to drinking the moment that she was born, because I would have convinced myself otherwise. I would have said, never mind. That was just a, oh, look, I did the sober, pregnancy thing. And look, I can do it. I can do it. And now but I would have gone right back to how I was before. And so there was a series of events that happened that I know are now are miracles and basically something bigger than me looking out for me. And I don't take that lightly and I take it really seriously. And that's why I'm here is to share that message and that hope with other people, because I think that that is my purpose, is to share that.
And how was the road to recovery? I know you did mention that there were several events that actually helped you through the phase. But talking about the road to recovery, what forms of support did you ask for during your recovery journey?
Yeah, so I think the opposite of addiction is connection. That's one of the things that I explore in my latest book. Both can be true. I think that we have a tendency in addiction to isolate, to want to shut down, to push people away. And of course, because that's our disease talking to us, telling us that it's not safe. People will take this away from you if you get close to them. They'll tell you to stop doing it. So just push them away and then you can do it as much as you want. And so my solution has always been other people. I feel connected to like a power greater than myself through other people, through hearing their stories, through feeling that support, hearing that I'm not alone in a thought, in an experience, normalizing those types of hard conversations. And that looks like recovery groups. That looks like um, I knew about therapy groups because when I was in college and I was sexually assaulted, I joined a women's survivor group. And it was me and 6 other women, and we met at somebody's house once a week, and we all shared our survival stories. And just that knowing that I wasn't the only one, and that all of the feelings of how I didn't want to be here anymore, how I thought it was my fault, how drinking was helping to cope with it, but it wasn't. All of those conversations with those women showed me you don't have to do this by yourself. You don't have to think these horrible thoughts in your head. You can put them into this room and that will help heal you. And so I just took that with me. And I knew that when I needed help for addiction, that it was to find other people who had walked that same experience, which is why I try and lend my voice to as many places as possible because I need to hear it from other people. And I want to share the hope piece of it. So it's definitely a connection with other people. Um, and seeking that. Anytime I know that I'm not doing well, it's because I'm not asking for help. I'm taking on too much, mentally, physically, emotionally, and the same is true in motherhood, right? Like, that's why they have support groups for mothers. That's why they have, these find the places that, you can just say the hard things out loud together and be there for one another.
To stay connected, visit our website and follow Healthy Aligned Living on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more conversations, insights, and updates. If you would like to reach out, you can contact us by phone at 1-866-213-0518 or email us at info@healthyalignedliving.com. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit from it as well.